and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Monday, the 17th of October. And joining me on this edition, our assistant editor, Steve Withers.
I mean to beat you to death and drink your blood from a boot.
News editor, Mark Hodgkinson.
Were you really going to shoot him?
And audio reviewer, Ed Selley.
Well, you could say it started out as an exercise and became an addiction.
Right, so just a little trailer released yesterday, Steve, and it's got me all warm and tingly inside.
Yeah, Rogue One, the final trailer, the final poster as well, which I thought looked quite good, and the final trailer before the film opens on the 16th of December.
The most beautiful I have ever seen the Star Wars universe. It looks amazing, the cinematography in this trailer. I mean, I hope it really carries over to the final film, because those shots of the Death Star in the haze above the clouds, and I mean, just the composition along with the wide shots of just, you know, the landscapes, and it just looked fantastic.
Yeah, there was more imagination and artistry in the single frame of that trailer than I think there was in the whole of The Force Awakens. It felt like it was in the Star Wars universe, but distinctly different and it has his own character, and that's excellent. That's you really want to see that, because, you know, much as I enjoyed The Force Awakens, it was too derivative, and there wasn't that much imagination. It just played it too safe. This feels like they're gonna, you know, because it's not part of the episode 1, 2, 3, etc. They're gonna, you know, go on a limb and not play it so safe and do something a bit different, and that really excites me.
The way Vader comes storming into that room as well with the cloak all, just pinch me now. I can't wait. As soon as the tickets open, I'll be buying about 4 or 5 screens of that, making real use of my unlimited card, which I have not used yet this month. Again,
time.
It's going to get hammered in December, that unlimited card.
I think the good thing about Rogue One is that because we're all familiar with Star Wars, the original Star Wars, and that universe and the period just before Star Wars, you know, the Empire's in control, the rebellion's just starting, etc. There's enough background information to go into the film without sitting there like I was in The Force Awakens thinking, what the hell is going on? Who are the First Order? What's the rebellion? Where's the Republic? What's that planet? Who's that? What's going on? Why are they, you know, none of that. So we can just go straight into the film and enjoy it. So on the 16th of December.
And you haven't got, Steve, that is how you live most of your life these days. Who's that? What's going on? Why am I here?
Yeah, and what does JJ think, you know, that you can see planets if you just look up and you can see planets being destroyed even though they're millions of miles away? Like, what's with that? You know, he did that in The Force Awakens, and he did that in Star Trek when they destroyed, sorry, spoilers, when they destroyed Vulcan. And, you know, he could look up and see this thing happening, and it had no effect on the gravitational pull of all the other objects in this. That just didn't make any sense.
Yeah, unless Maz's Cantina planet was within the same star system as the Hodgkinson system, which they blew up. That doesn't make any sense at all. But none of that made any sense. They didn't even explain what planet they were blowing up.
Yeah, but why would? Yeah, if it was in the same system, why did Han go there and not just go straight to where they should have been?
Yeah.
Yeah, they just didn't make any sense.
I don't want to be tedious here, but are we discussing anything else this hour? Because I need to know if I can just open something up and just crack on mute.
What, you're not taking part in this Star Wars debate, Ed? You've seen the trailer?
Not necessarily, no.
You've seen the trailer?
I've seen the trailer.
What did you think?
Yes, it looks pretty good. And you know what? Come December, sometime around my birthday, I'll go and see it. It'll be great. But am I going to discuss the minutiae of 1 minute 48 seconds of footage exactly the same way as I didn't discuss the minutiae of 1 minute 48 seconds of footage of Force Awakens? No, I'm not. I'm delighted that it's going to happen. I'm sure I'll enjoy it. I hope very much that it's good, and that's great. In the meantime, I'll crack on with some other things.
Can I just be a bit controversial and say that the acting in between the amazing action shots look really cheesy and bad?
That, to be fair, does make it a proper Star Wars film.
Sorry, Hodge, your line's really bad at the minute. I think I might have to drop you from this. So thanks, guys, for killing the mood.
Oh, come on! All right, I cannot sustain this level of you know. For
don't get me, I'll still be going.
Yeah, Ed was feeding back, wasn't he?
I think I might have just been feeding back. I got sufficiently shouty that just to say, I can't do this week in, week out until it happens. I'm sorry. It's just it's an important film, and you know, I have very high hopes that it'll be a good film. But is it the be all and end all of my topics of conversation between now and then? No, sorry.
At least in a galaxy far, far away, they've actually found some decent looking women.
They found some women, other than the one that seemed to only exist in the previous universe. I would say Natalie Portman's quite attractive. Are we not agreed on that one?
Mm-hmm.
I think she's stunning.
It was hard to separate, as with all of the prequel. It's hard to separate characters, be they attractive, interesting, whatever, from the truly turd-like dialogue that they sprouted for 3 consecutive films. So that takes the edge off, rather, doesn't it? So
So rebellions are built on hope, and our hope is built on this trailer. Is it going to live up? At least we know a little bit more about the story now, and quite an interesting twist there. So it kind of starts to make sense where our character's coming from. So I'm really looking forward to it now. And I guess if you don't want to know a little bit more about the story, don't watch a trailer. I think that's an important point to make, because it does give a little bit more away, doesn't it, Steve?
It does give a little bit away about certain characters' relationship to another character, although I don't know whether that's really that big a deal. I mean, I've got a pretty good idea what's going to happen in the film anyway. Hopefully there will be some twists and some unexpected events, because you kind of think like, oh, okay, it's going to be a battle, they're going to steal the plans, because that's what it says at the beginning of Star Wars, so we know that's the ultimate goal. But hopefully there'll be some other twists and turns in there we're not expecting.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing as a prequel, though, we don't know. We know what the end result is, that the plans get to Leia on the ship, and Vader then confronts her. So we know that. That's the start of A New Hope. But we don't know anything else. So even though it is a prequel, we don't know anything about these characters. We don't know where it's going. We don't know if they all die or whatever. So at least there's still a bit of there's still a bit to learn there, and it should be an original story, hopefully, and not the same. I don't know if you watched Mr. Plinkett's review of the Star Wars saga so far, which just went up last week. Red Letter Media. It's not office friendly, so go and watch it in the office.
No.
But he talks about this whole things repeating and all the rest of it. And Lucas was always saying, things repeat. It's a bit like poetry. And I'm like, well, really, does poetry repeat? No, it just all rhymes, doesn't it?
Well, I think what he actually means is a leitmotif that you'd use in music, where you might have a theme that you repeat over and over again throughout a piece.
Yeah,
But the thing is, he didn't do that. That would have made perfect sense if he'd done that with the prequels and had Anakin be about the same age as Luke, and then and see him rise and fall, and then you see the rise of the son and the redemption of the father. That would have made sense. But having him as a 9-year-old at the beginning makes bugger all sense.
And a virgin birth. And a virgin birth. That's an important thing.
Well,
yeah.
And the force is actually a bacterial infection.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't think any single point of the prequels was so magnificently akin to just poking someone in the eyes with your fingers. It's like, yeah, well, sod you. It's bacteria. So this is if you like a healthy reminder why we shouldn't get wind ourselves up to the brink of apoplexy.
Yeah, but the point I'm making here is that we're stepping out of that universe, we're stepping out of that timeline slightly. So hopefully there's none of that in there. There's none of this, I've got a bad feeling about this, and other things that get repeated in Star Wars. Hopefully this will be a standalone war film, Star Wars. Hopefully this is this, and some of it looks epic. So I guess at least 2 of us here are excited, and Ed will go and see it anyway, and Mark will probably wait on the disc or Cody it.
No. I'll go and see it.
Will you?
I mean, it looks amazing. Yeah.
Just so you know, I'm now most of the way through my cup of coffee, so my disposition is improving. But
same here.
Miserable sod.
So we're going to move on then, if that's the case, and let's go to hardware news. And Samsung have finally given up the ghost when it comes to the Galaxy Note 7 and just pulled it completely, stopped production and all the rest of it. And I guess having issued replacements that then burst into fire after the originals did the same thing, there wasn't anywhere else they could really go. It had to be damage limitation at that point, Ed, didn't it, as a major corporation like that. And I guess they're already siphoning off cash into one account, probably a few billion to cover the cost of this.
Essentially, you're right. Yeah, you get the public is not merciless when it comes to these things, and this doesn't necessarily just apply to consumer electronics. It applies to other complicated pieces of hardware and software that we buy. If you screw up and you say mea culpa, and you say we're going to sort this out, and we're going to send we're going to issue replacements that will not demonstrate the issue that has been discovered. If you crack that, and actually you just do it in a fairly transparent and efficient way, you can get through it without too much of a problem. When you do what's happened here and you rush it, and exactly the same problem is present, and let's be honest, it's not a small problem either, there is no coming back from that. I mean, would you taken in light of the fact that the company has failed to fix a pretty serious error once, would you have any faith taking another handset if you'd paid money for even if you hadn't paid money for it? I don't want to sound like a stereotypical tabloid reader, but it's not just me making that decision now. I mean, if it was lying around the house and my wife and child is here, that's sorry, it would simply be an unacceptable level of risk, however infinitesimal the number of ones that have actually burst into flames is. They have run out of options. They have no choice but to knock this one on the head, and it'd be interesting to see whether the Galaxy Note named full stop can be salvaged as well.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, there were a couple burst into flames on planes, but the planes were still on the ground at the time. Now, could you imagine that happening during flight? And how scary that would be for one of them things to, and especially if it's sitting in somebody's pocket as well. So you're going to have injuries there. You're then going to have this device that's trying to blow itself up in a pressurized cabin. I mean, that's just scary.
The PR was bad enough, wasn't it? But yeah, that would have been even worse.
Bringing down an entire aircraft would have been
bringing down an airline.
PR.
No real coming back from that.
Yeah.
So yeah, the most maddening thing is obviously since the replacement started to fail, there's been far less communication from Samsung other than acknowledging that that this is untenable and it's being knocked on the head. So we still have no idea exactly what the trigger for this is, and whether that it would appear obviously that nothing else from either Samsung or anyone else is habitually bursting into flames, but is this a design practice which other manufacturers are considering? Do they know, has Samsung sort of communicated via the suppliers that this is a bad idea? I mean, this is where I don't want to lead and I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but Samsung and Apple have generally been among the more innovative of the major phone manufacturers. So it's not outside the realms of possibility. Whatever was done with the Note 7 does exist in prototype or design form somewhere else in the market. And unless Samsung is more transparent about it, that's a problem.
There's a whole question of whether we should allow sealed batteries after this now, because I mean these kind of batteries are quite volatile anyway, and the fact that you can't get them out, if the batteries were replaceable, Samsung could have just told everyone to take the battery out and we'll send you a new one rather than doing that. And it creates problems when they come to be recycled, because these batteries are glued into the cases. And apparently, I was doing a bit of reading last night about it, and in the major recycling, there's a major recycling place in America that takes all the old phones, and they have a serious fire like 4 or 5 times a year, and they say these sealed batteries are the absolute worst because they're glued into the case, and it makes it an absolute nightmare. So I think safety concerns in general about sealed batteries, and it seems that Samsung were copying Apple anyway, again, in having this, these fancy looking totally sealed cases. I think the question will be asked whether they should be allowed going forwards, because it could have caused something genuinely serious.
Of course, it's not just mobile phone batteries either. This is a well-known thing with certain laptops as well, using the same types of battery packs. There is incidents where that has happened as well, where suddenly laptops have burst into flames and that kind of thing because they're using, like you say, these batteries are volatile anyway. So is it because we're pushing against the manufacturers, saying we want battery life that's better than 1 day, and that's what's pushing them to basically take things to where we don't have any long-term testing, so these things could happen?
It's possible, Phil, but I think in the case of the Galaxy Note 7, the problem was that they rushed development of it to beat the iPhone 7 to market, and I suspect they just didn't do enough testing. And
there is that suggestion for sure.
I think they just cocked up, and because these are incredibly complex devices, and as Ed said, no one expects every single product to be perfect, and things do go wrong. But this is a pretty major problem. If your phone's bursting into flames, I mean that's potentially lethal. It's not like it's just crashing or an app doesn't work. This is a big problem. They rushed development. They put it to market too quickly. They didn't test it properly, and they put
allegedly
consumers at risk.
Allegedly,
yeah, okay, allegedly. But ultimately, whatever they did, they ended up putting consumers at risk. And they did not respond to it very well. And
I think there is something in what Phil says, though, because it takes more power to drive an Ultra HD screen and all the latest bells and whistles, and there's more and more power required for these devices because they can do so much, but the battery technology hasn't really advanced so much that it can support it. So yeah, it is a case of the technology in the phone outstripping that of the batteries at the moment.
So will we see lots of other manufacturers starting to delay releases of their phones as a consequence of this? Maybe they start thinking, hang on a minute, have we got a problem too?
Well, that would be, if nothing else, that would be encouraging, because it means that the information that we currently don't have is at least in circulation with people that need it. So, it does weigh heavy on. I mean, my phone will be up for replacement. I don't have a contract, so it's up for replacement when I feel like it, when I can afford it. But I will get round to changing it probably early next year. And I'd just like to know that the same design principles that have proved wholly unsuccessful here are not replicated, unwittingly in the device I end up choosing.
As far as I'm aware, Ed, I haven't seen any reports of iPhone 5, 6, 6S or 7s doing this. So
yeah, but unfortunately, I'm too wedded to Droid as a phone operating system now. I couldn't go back to I have no problem with iOS for iPad, and I have no problem actually using OS X on computers. I don't really like iOS on phones anymore. It just limits me in ways that I've just become subconsciously used to using on Android. So we'll see how it goes. But and also, it must be said, the uncontracted price of the iPhone 7 is just a complete and utter joke. So that kind of rules itself out as well.
Maybe that's the cost you pay for it not bursting into flames.
Maybe it's because they took out the 3.5mm input jack. That may be the reason.
Yeah, that saved them money. Yeah.
Well, yes, as I say, it will be interesting to see if the Galaxy Note name and sort of brand section survives this. But I mean, at the very least, they have responded in a pretty definitive way. They're sending out apparently some quite exciting packaging, so you can send your unit back. At least it's one model, it's one design fault. There is an issue. It is a pretty serious issue, but at least they're doing the right thing by knocking it on the head, by taking it on the chin, and basically giving everybody their money back on this. And I also see that they're actually offering quite a bit of money off other Galaxy Note or Samsung phones if people want to swap to those. I think they're giving up to £100 off some of the models.
I think that was just America, wasn't it? $100.
Was it?
I don't think that's neat. Yeah.
Yeah, here on Treasure Island, you should just count yourself lucky that you still have both sides of your face.
Post-Brexit Britain, we're going to get ripped off like
at least the biggest positive to come of Brexit so far is that Marmite's now not available, which is great.
It's only not available in Tesco's. It's available everywhere else. And it's also worth pointing out, this is all a conspiracy, people. You're not looking in the right place. The reason there's a shortage of Marmite is there hasn't been a spill of crude oil in the sea, and they scrape it off seabirds. That's where Marmite comes from, and that just hasn't happened.
Let me just state that is a joke, and we are not in any way saying that Unilever make a product out of crude oil.
Can I just say, for breakfast this morning, I had toast with Marmite and avocado, and it was delicious.
And avocado?
I know it sounds... Trust me,
weird.
Trust me, Mark, try it. It's delicious. And when I first said it, I thought, ugh, but it's really nice. It really works.
I think I'll listen to Mark, who is a trained chef here, and knows what makes
I'm really struggling to get that in my head around that.
He's just trying to be
guacamole. That's it.
Yeah, he's just trying to be really middle class here and failing miserably, Mark.
Sounds.
Well, I wouldn't try and compete with Ed on who's the most middle class.
Do piss off.
Oh boy.
Right, let's move things along, and that's the Galaxy Note 7. It is no more, and we'll keep an eye on the story and see what happens with that. I'm sure Samsung will do their best to try and put right what's gone wrong there, and hopefully that's the last time we see phones breaking and basically busting into flames, because it is rather scary, and like Steve pointed out, it really could be a health hazard. Right, let's move along. Let's talk projectors. It's getting to that time of the year where the nights are drawing in. It's getting dark around about 6:30 now up here. I mean, I don't know what it's like down your way, Steve, but normally up this end of the country, we stay a little lighter a bit longer, but no, it's getting really dark, which means it's the ideal opportunity for people to go out and get projectors. And there's lots of bargains out there at the moment. As long as you don't want inky, deep black levels at that price point, everything else, when you look at the budget stuff that we've been looking at recently, that's the HD27 from Optoma and the BenQ W3000 DLP, which I've reviewed recently. The review of the HD27 will be up the week this podcast goes out, but I don't know exactly when, so keep an eye on the homepage. But when you get to this price point, and we're talking under £1,000, so the W3000 could be had for £1,000, and the HD27 is around about £600, £500, £600, depending on where you look online. They are 1080p, you're not going to get 4K, you're not going to get HDR, you're not going to get wide colour gamut. In fact, a lot of DLP projectors really struggle to hit Rec 709, which is the standard for HD TV and PAL TV in the past. So in the past, they've been really restricted, certainly in terms of green, cyan and blue. So when it came to watching sports like football and so on, the pitches normally looked really off hue when it came to green and so on. And that was the bad point. However, the W3000 and the HD27 use a new colour wheel technology, which BenQ tell us they use a phosphor type coating on the colour wheel. It's an RGB colour wheel, 6-speed. And by using this technology, they say that they can hit Rec 709, and they can. And we've measured it, and that is the case. The HD27, Optoma don't say how they do it. Well, I'll bet any money they're doing exactly the same as what BenQ are doing, which is adding this coating and changing the RGB segments to make them more accurate, because that also hits Rec 709. So finally we're getting budget projectors here which are reasonably bright, can be used in any type of living room. Black levels are not great, shadow details are not great, but if you're using them in a living room with white walls, white ceilings and so on, you're raising the black floor as it is within the room. So the fact that they don't go very black doesn't really matter in that type of environment. Where they do score now is with really accurate colours, like I say, bright images, great motion on a DLP projector. It's one of the things that they do really well is motion. 24 frames per second playback is absolutely bang on, and no induced blur or anything like that. And I've got to say, at the money, there's not a lot of bad points. And the other big plus point is they no longer come built in with the emitters, but the glasses that they come with emitters that you plug into the projectors, and you can watch 3D if you're still into 3D. And I have to say, 3D performance, I've got an X7000 here, which is a JVC DLA projector, which does pretty decent 3D. Can't match these DLP projectors in terms of motion, in terms of lack of crosstalk, in terms of image depth. I mean, you really are getting a lot for your money these days when it comes to projectors. And I know I've seen a lot of them recently, Steve, because obviously you're looking at TVs, I'm looking at projectors, but certainly you have experience of these things. And at the price point, they really are absolutely cracking bits of kit.
Yeah, I mean, we've said this on numerous podcasts, but when people talk about, how to get the most bang for my buck, and they rarely think of projectors. They usually think of bigger screen TVs, and TV screens obviously are getting bigger each year. But the large screen size televisions do cost a lot of money. But for less than £1,000, you can get a very big image that is, as you just pointed out, getting more and more accurate in terms of color accuracy. Yes, the blacks aren't perfect, but given the environment they'll probably be used in, that's not an issue. And you get a really impressive picture. And we said it before, but people don't often think of projectors, probably because their experience of them has usually been either a boardroom, a classroom, or a pub. But when you do see a well set up home cinema projector, it can be incredibly impressive in terms of image quality.
Yeah.
And so if you're thinking, I want a really big screen in my lounge, then think about a projector, because you'll get the most bang for your buck doing that.
Yeah, I have to point out, it is a completely different image to a TV. So the projected image is different, because what you're doing is you're bouncing light off another surface back to your eyes. So it's not as bright, it's not as uniform as a TV would be. And certainly when it comes to the brightness levels from a TV, you can't match that with a projector. But what you get is the projected image, and there's just something about the projected image, even at this price point, where if you're watching film content at 24 frames a second, and it's got a decent image quality, and these things are very, very decent. I mean, what you can get for £600 nowadays is really, really impressive. There are little side effects, there always are, and there's always downfalls with these things, because there is no such thing as a perfect display or a perfect TV. But if you take the little foibles out of the way and just look at the image, you're getting a really quite a cinematic image at that price point, because it's a projected image, because it's just something about it that just gives it that filmic feel. So yeah, if you want to look for a big screen, and don't have the budget to go and buy 75 inches and can't even get it through the door, because I certainly couldn't get it through my door.
That's more likely the issue.
Yeah, you got to get these things through the door. You got to get them on the wall, so your wall's going to be pretty. If you're going to wall mount it, yeah, it's a different way of doing it. The other good thing about these little projectors, okay, they're not reference projectors. You're not going to get reference performance out of it, and if that's what you're looking for, then you need to spend a little bit more money, and you're looking at a Sony HW45 as a bare minimum. I would suggest, if you're looking for a proper cinematic projector for a home cinema. But these little machines, they've got great input lag. Yeah, you're talking around about 38 milliseconds, which is not bad at all. They're very, very portable, and they are built like a tank, so they are built to be moved around and shoved in a cupboard when not in use, or take it round to your mate's house for big screen gaming, whatever. That's what they're designed to do. And the other thing that they're designed to do is basically a home, what you would call a home entertainment projector. So cover lots of different bases. So big screen sport, watching a football, 3D movies, watching a movie, playing games. They're designed to cover all these areas, and we've tested them and really can't really find any faults with them for the money. Just don't expect a reference image. If you're looking for something like that, then you're going to have to spend money, but you pay your money, you get what you get. And at this price point, I don't think you can get better than the BenQ W3000 or the Optoma. And if they're still out of your price range, there's plenty of other options out there as well. Just have a look at the recent reviews. We've covered a lot of budget projectors for that kind of money, and that are portable and so on. But yeah, if you're looking for a cinematic image, then like TVs, if you want the best technology, you have to pay a bit more. So another thing that I saw this week, recording the podcast on a Friday obviously, Steve, was I finally got to catch up with the JVC DLA Z1 4K laser projector. Impressive name.
Impressive price.
Impressive price. You saw it at IFA. This was my first opportunity to see it. They had it was basically for the UK distributor and custom installers at Mercedes World down in Weybridge. But there's a few journalists invited along to have a look at it that didn't get to see it at IFA. It was on a 240-inch screen. So when you saw it at IFA, it was what, 120 inch?
Yeah, it was about 120 inches in a dedicated blacked out room.
Right, so this was a cinema built, which is on the top floor of Mercedes World. It normally runs a standard definition cinema projector for running. I think it shows the production line or something like that, or where they build the F1 car, or how it's developed, or something like that. Anyway, so they were using a 240-inch screen in there with the DLA Z1. I think we got exactly the same demonstration footage. It was two films basically put together by JVC Kenwood, filmed by them. The usual thing: beaches, forests, skylines, where the camera's pretty static and doesn't move, and you get to see the resolution. And one of them was obviously HDR, so you get to see the dynamic range of the projector. And then we saw a clip from Deadpool on UHD Blu-ray, and I have to say, very, very impressive. On a 240-inch screen, it was just as bright as probably an X7000 or an X9000 on a 100-inch screen. So, if you want to go big screen, you can certainly go big screen with this projector. Colours were really good. HDR, when it comes to projectors, and I've got a 7000 here, you've got a JVC 5000. We've been experimenting with HDR stuff. You can get it looking decent, but it just doesn't have that same dynamic range that you're going to get from a TV. And as we just explained, a projected image is completely different to a TV image. TV can hit 1,000 nits or more. You really are struggling when it comes to projected image, because this projector could hit 3,000 lumens and still it didn't have that pop. I would suggest it was getting maybe 300 nits maximum, and that's just by looking at it. That certainly wasn't by measurement, but it doesn't have that dynamic pop that you get from HDR material. And we're still talking about laser So this is the future, and it's a £30,000 projector.
Yeah.
It was still struggling. And the main thing for me, and it was picked up, and I asked the question in the video as well. If you haven't seen the video's on the homepage in the media box, or you can go to the First Look article and the video's in there, or just go to our YouTube channel and it's on there. Was the black levels, and certainly with HDR material, there's a definite shift in the black floor.
Yeah.
Where it's not as inky deep as you would expect from a JVC. There is a lift in the blacks to get the highlights up to a level to make them stand out without clipping. And it just seems to be, and this is for all projectors, not just this projector, I think, it's going to be very, very difficult to get HDR to work on a projected image.
Yeah, I mean, if you put it in context, even the Dolby Vision demo that I had, and that was using 2 professional laser projectors, custom built by Dolby. I mean, on a very big screen, obviously, and this is designed for theatrical presentation, but 2 custom-built laser projectors, and they were only delivering, I think it was 150 nits of peak brightness. Obviously, they had a better black floor, so they were trying to keep the black floor down, but still get some brightness in there without losing that. But I don't think you can ever expect, well, I know you can never expect a projected image to have the same kind of peak highlights you're going to get from a television, because it just isn't physically possible. But what's slightly concerning is in order to get a sort of a watchable HDR image on a projector, you do have to raise the black floor, and that's kind of robbing the JVC of its major advantage, isn't it?
Yeah, so, I mean, even talking to the engineer and the product manager there, and you can go for accurate, which is obviously what Dolby does, and they're struggling to hit, like you say, 100 odd nits peak, or you can do what JVC were doing in this demo, which was raising the black floor and therefore raising the highlights a little bit more. But it just didn't look like a JVC image to me when they did it that way. I think I would be more inclined to go for accuracy and keep the black levels. And I guess this is the same point, guys, when it comes to OLED against LED LCD. We're kind of hitting the same thing, obviously a lot brighter, but OLED has the same black floor, I would say, as a JVC. So you got the same issue here where, really good black levels but really struggling to hit the peak brightness, whereas LED LCD raised blacks, you're not getting the type of shadow detail and just above black detail that you're getting from the OLEDs, but you're getting more of the peak highlights and more of the detail in the peak highlights. Yeah,
well, I think what I'd like to see as a projector owner would be an Ultra HD Blu-ray player that gave you the option of outputting full HDR, 4K Rec 2020 10-bit, or SDR 4K Rec 2020 10-bit. That way you get the majority of the benefits of the disc without necessarily having to lose the black floor in order to get some sort of watchable HDR image. That would be quite a nice treat. And they did mention the possibility of that on the Oppo Blu-ray player. So if that is the case, then that would be a big selling point for it to projector owners particularly.
Yeah, it's going to be a work in progress for some time, I think. And like I said, I mean, both of us have got JVC projectors. We've been struggling to get a decent looking HDR images out of them, and I think the answer at the minute is what you're suggesting, Steve, which is drop the HDR and just give us the 4K wide color gamut 10-bit video for the time being, and until laser gets to the point where it is going to produce really compelling HDR images. And so far on this 30 grand projector, it was absolutely brilliant when it came to filling a big screen like that with plenty of brightness. The resolution's there. The lens is absolutely gorgeous on this thing. I mean, that's where the money goes. The money has gone into the glass on this projector, because it is sharp all the way across the image, corner to corner, edge to edge. It's ultra sharp. And that's where you pay your money in the glass for that. And again, the colours looked really nice and all the rest of it. It was just the fact that HDR, no, I'm sorry, it just doesn't have that impact on a projector. And like you say, I mean, even Dolby can't get Dolby Vision looking as good as they can on a TV in a projected theatrical environment.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a first look at the DLA Z1 projector. I've got to say, really impressive. Another important thing just to mention before we wrap up on the projectors: if you are waiting on a replacement for the X5000, X7000 and X9000 JVC models this year, you're going to be waiting a long time. They're being carried over. They do not see any point in updating the projectors at this moment in time, because they have everything on it that's available at the minute, and they're really good performance. So it looks like those are going to go to a 2-year product cycle rather than the yearly product cycle. And I guess we can see, because they won't do native 4K, they can't do native 4K, so there's not really anywhere they can go. And I've seen some comments as well saying, oh, well, Optoma is going to beat them to the punch. Well, actually, that's not a native 4K DLP chip that's going in the Optoma. So if you want native 4K at this moment in time, it is the Sony's. But again, they are just being updated for HDR, and we had a quick look at that at IFA as well, Steve, and I'm guessing that the HDR is just the same as every other HDR projector at the moment.
Yeah, it was very poor, actually. I have to say, I think of the demos that I saw at IFA, the Z1 was superior in that respect, definitely. I mean, whilst not ideal, it certainly was better. And I thought the VW550 I thought was a bit disappointing.
Okay, so that's Projector World. Another thing that Ed keeps telling us about is how big and small things are getting at the moment, especially when it comes to speakers. You've had some pretty ginormous speakers in recently, Ed.
Yes, there's been some big ones, but then I'm not just focusing on the large scale. Back to back, both the largest pair of floor standers I've ever tested for AVForums went through, which is up on the site as we speak, in the form of the Sonus Faber Venere S. But then, because we don't all have the room for a speaker quite as sizable as that, I also tested what is by an enormous margin the smallest floor stander I've ever tested for anybody, which is the Neat Iota Alpha, which is about 40 centimeters tall.
Is that the one where the driver points up at a 45-degree angle?
It's slightly less than 45 degrees, but right. Yes, it points up diagonally, because otherwise, if it fired directly forwards, it just simply wouldn't be going anywhere near your ear at the seated listening position.
Right, so it's one for if you were lying on the floor, then basically.
Everything you see in the photos about the Neats just says these can't possibly work. I make that there's no disputing this. That you just have to sit down. And I do recommend sitting down to listen to them, and they're just extraordinarily good. It looks more like they have to spend as much time overcoming the intrinsic nature of their own design, but no, honestly, they are quite an extraordinary loudspeaker. You wouldn't just choose them because you need a very, very small speaker. If you are looking for a speaker at about £1,300, you should consider them anyway, even if you do have the space for something larger. I don't know exactly when the review's going up, but it's one of the ones where, as I pointed out in the listening section, after a while, your brain just sort of goes, all right then, you win, and you just forget the fact that actually, from my listening position, it's almost impossible to see one of them, and just accept the fact that it works. Just incredible. So yeah, we've done large and small floor standers, and as I say, more normal service is being resumed in terms of speaker reviews. Actually, I've just finished up and will be writing presently the latest offering from stalwart British brand Wharfdale. So I'm not just probing the weirder dimensions of loudspeakers. I am going to try and find you some more sort of normal ones as well. Good
stuff. I guess that kind of wraps up the hardware for this week. So those reviews about those products, the W3000 is up there at the moment. The Z1, we're hoping to review that in January, I think. Hopefully. We got one other to talk about. That's a 7601. Steve's going to give us 5 sentences to make you go and read this review.
It's a well-built, high-performing TV that has a full array backlight, 65-inch screen, and local dimming. It supports HDR, has Android TV built in, and overall it was a cracking performer. It has one drawback, unfortunately, which was its out-of-the-box accuracy was poor. There was way too much blue in the grayscale, although it's easy to fix that using the 2-point white balance control. But otherwise, I thought it was a really good performing TV from Philips, and it's been a long time coming. This is a TV we saw in demonstration form, Phil, at least 2 years ago, and was supposed to come out last year, and has finally been released. And you can get it for £2,000, which is not bad for a 65-inch full array local dimming HDR 4K TV.
Now, you see, Steve, you could get a review done in 1 minute 30 seconds every week. We're stuck to things like that. Anyway, we're running out of time. So that review will also be up on the site this week as the podcast goes out. And the Neats that Ed were talking about, the review will be up for those as well. So lots of things for you to look forward to this week. We're going to move on to movie news next. Right, so films opening this Friday, Steve.
We got Jack Reacher, Never Go Back, which clearly hasn't been listened to because they have gone back to make another Jack Reacher film. I quite enjoyed the original Jack Reacher film, even though I know Tom Cruise is miscast in the role. Obviously too short for the part of Jack Reacher, who's meant to be a really big bloke. I thought he actually delivered it quite well. So I'm quite looking forward to this. The other films opening this Friday are Ouija, Origin of Evil.
You mean Ouija? Is it no Ouija?
Ouija board. Ouija board. Ouija?
Ouija.
We say Ouija.
Is it Ouija? I thought Ouija was that photographer.
Yes, I thought Ouija was a Glaswegian.
Yeah, well, that is the case as well, yeah. But no, it's Ouija, isn't it?
Ouija would make more sense. But
well, there's no E at the end, though. Ouija is how it's... Anyway, it's a made-up word, isn't it? Because it's a game. It was actually invented as a game. It's not a real thing. It's not a cobblers. Anyway, that's opening on Friday. Obviously, time with the approaching Halloween.
Of course it's made up, Steve. You kind of talk to the dead.
Yeah, I know. But, I mean, it's not even like it's some sort of...
I don't know, Phil. Have you ever been to Eastbourne?
God's waiting room.
I don't know. The actual alive status of many of those residents is entirely debatable.
Anyway, I say it's Ouija. If you agree with me, dear listeners, put it in the podcast forum underneath this podcast. Or if you agree with Steve, don't bother.
Oh, it's made up of we and yar, isn't it? That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. We are both then. That would be the correct pronunciation, surely. Anyway, bollocks, it's a horror film opening on Friday. And also Keeping Up with the Joneses, which actually looks like it might be quite good fun. It's got John Hamm and Gal Gadot, who's currently playing Wonder Woman, and his foot is a butcher's dog. And they're basically a couple moving next door to another couple played by Zach Galif. I can't pronounce his surname, Galifianakis or whatever it is, and Ilsa Fisher. And they become convinced that they're up to no good, and they turn out to be a pair of spies.
Elsa
basically.
Fisher
or Isla.
Is Elsa or Isla?
Isla Fisher. Actually, I think you're right. It's Isla Fisher.
I thought so.
But what's Zach's surname?
I don't know. I've never heard of him.
Ed will be able to do that. He's middle class. How do you pronounce that one, Ed?
I'm having to be on mute because there's enormous amounts of drilling going on next door, and I don't want to add yet more interference.
What's his name, Steve?
Zach. Hang on. I'm going to get it up now.
I don't know who it is.
It's Ouija. It's Ouija Jones.
Galifianakis.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Zach, yeah.
I see we've woken Ed up there.
It's an action comedy.
Right, so that's Jack Reacher, Never Go Back to a Ouija Board, Origin of Evil, and Keeping Up with the Joneses with Isla and Isla Fisher.
Fisher.
And Zach, what's his face?
Smooth.
Anyway, Steve, moving on from that disaster, Blu-ray releases this week.
Yeah, Blu-ray wise, we've got Angry Birds coming out on Blu-ray and Ultra HD Blu-ray. The Conjuring 2, obviously another horror film that's tying in with the approach of Halloween. Actually, I saw The Conjuring and quite enjoyed that. So this is based upon, it's meant to be based upon a true story, but clearly it isn't. And a famous case actually in Enfield, where a couple of kids were claiming to be possessed by poltergeists, but clearly they were putting it on, and some really gullible people believe them. But that's come out. I mean, I'm sure it's quite an entertaining film as a horror film, but it's not based on reality, obviously. Tales of Halloween, which is a portmanteau thing with various short films from some interesting directors. That looks quite cool. Cell, which is it looks like a ropey action film with Samuel L. Jackson and John Cusack, both of whom should frankly know better.
That'd be a great movie name for the Samsung story, wouldn't it? The Note 7 story. Cell. Exploding phones.
There's The Take, which was originally called Bastille Day, and for very obvious reasons has changed its name since it came out of the cinema. That's the one with Idris Elba, where they're running around Paris trying to find a terrorist.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that's even getting released at the minute, because what's all going on in France in the very recent past. I'm surprised that they're even releasing that, to be honest, Steve.
It has been delayed significantly from when it was supposed to come out. And obviously they've given it a completely generic, as far as I can work out, meaningless name. But yeah, it does seem to be in slightly poor taste given recent events. And also Preacher Season 1, which I have not seen, is available on Amazon Prime. It's co-written and created based on a comic book, but it's co-written by Seth Rogen, who I really like. So I'm actually, and it stars Dominic Cooper, who I also really like. So I'm actually quite curious about this, and I've heard good things about it. So it's something I'm quite keen to watch at some point, although there's just too much TV right now. So I have to go on the back burner for a bit, I think.
Yeah, there's far too much TV. I'm actually going to sit down tonight and watch Westworld, the 2 episodes that are out. I managed to get Now TV, so I'm going to do that. And still Games back. What more can you say?
Well, not a lot, really.
When's it on?
Friday night, isn't it, Phil?
Friday at 9:30. It's the first time it's been available UK wide, because it's only ever been available on BBC Scotland or YouTube. So
Does it have subtitles?
Steve, you've been around me for how many years?
Yeah, should be quite good at it by now.
Right, so before we move on to taking money from very gullible people, we're going to go to this new thing that's been invented to take money from even more gullible people, Steve.
I think the vinyl craze has gone too far now, because apparently Zavvi and Disney are releasing Blu-rays, normal Blu-rays, but in 12-inch sleeves. So, big record style sleeves, which just seems, I don't know, it's either incredibly cool or just plain silly, and I can't decide which.
No, can I decide for you? It's monumentally stupid. Don't get me wrong. Actually, there are, in terms of space efficiency, the 12-inch sleeve. If you've got the good old IKEA Kallax, you can get an enormous amount of vinyl into the space that would normally be occupied by a rather smaller number of DVDs or Blu-rays. But it's totally nonsensical, because let's face it, it's not like anyone else has suddenly decided to start offering their films in equally stupid packaging. So they're going to require completely different points of storage to all the rest of your films, and it's a complete and monumental waste of time. The only thing I can assume that Disney is thinking people do, and I'm sure that some people do, is that the discs will come out and go into a big wallet, and you can then use those display frames to actually put the film thing in.
Right.
But that's it.
Is this because they've milked everybody on the steel books that they have to bring out something else to do it? Don't get me wrong. One of the highlights are collecting laser discs with a gatefold sleeve, artwork and notes and all the rest of it, the same as vinyl. But I'm not getting this one.
No. It does make me feel nostalgic for Laserdisc, but ultimately, well, first of all, I've moved beyond Blu-ray anyway, so that's an old technology to me.
I did say that 4K Blu-ray needed to be Laserdisc sized, not for any specification reason, but to reintroduce gigantic tank-like players, the sense of occasion. Because let's face it, in convenience terms, there's no size of physical format that's going to be more convenient than the streaming option. So they should have completely reversed course and built it as a 12-inch monster disc.
Yeah, and
something with real ceremony to it.
Yeah, and none of this auto flip technology that you have to get up after 30 minutes, go across, open it up, turn the disc over to the other side, and put it back in and go back and sit down again.
I think they might well have done well to skip that particular bit, Phil.
No, that's what made Laserdisc, wasn't it, Steve? Especially if you got a carved disc, which was even less
CAV, where it was 20 minutes on each side, 15 minutes, wasn't it, on each side? I think was it the Star Wars box set that was the 3 original Star Wars films?
It was
CAV.
It was 9 discs per film, wasn't it?
9 discs, 2 sides per each disc. So there was an awful lot of getting up to change stuff over.
It did always used to amuse me that people were then complaining about layer change on DVD. It's like, you guys haven't lived. You really haven't. But no, as I say, I think it's cynical and it's opportunistic, and it just doesn't make any sense to me. But then again, very little. I'm slowly metamorphosizing into a grumpy old person. Bloody hell.
I'm trying to remember why we had carved discs. Can you remember, Steve? Was it for slow motion? Was it that the only way you could do still frame?
You could freeze frame and everything like that on it properly. On later players, they did it artificially with CLV, where they could take a digital image, of the film of the frame and stop it, but for CAV, you could actually do frame by frame on there.
That's what I thought it was. And just for that capability, you had to put up with 20 minutes aside. I remember the Toy Story box set as well. I loved that box set, but again, that was 9 discs or more just for the film.
Some of those Disney box sets were pure works of art. They really were. absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, which looking
well,
at
in
this,
other words, it's the people that did all of those have just obviously taken control of the asylum again. It's like, well, we only have one good idea, and we're just gonna throw it at the wall and see if it sticks.
yeah, but you see, the thing is, Ed, though, if you look at that link, and we'll put the link in the podcast thread, none of that artwork is particularly nice.
Oh no, that doesn't surprise me at all. It's I mean, by the same token, it must be said, because there is this subset of people buying records and not listening to them. There are some truly fantastic sleeves doing the rounds at the moment. I bought the repressing of the first sort of major Arcade Fire album the other day, Funeral, which had that the image is of a wooden panel, and the texture they've achieved of the feel of the wood on the actual sleeve is absolutely outstanding. It's just a wonderful thing to interact with, and I dare say that once the boom properly collapses in on itself, this sort of thing will fall by the wayside again. So it's nice to enjoy it while it is, but that's still for me secondary to the contents. It's just a nice additional thing rather than the reason why I bought it in the first place. And this film business, this just strikes me as that with knobs on.
Talking about laser discs and vinyl and the artwork and all the rest of it, I guess that brings us neatly onto old-fashioned movie posters. Because I don't think the movie poster exists anymore, does it really? Even going to multiplexes and stuff like that, it all seems to be these cardboard cutouts, things that promote movies now. And the old movie poster, as we knew it as kids, Steve, going back far enough back into the 70s and 80s, where you got the proper double-sided posters that, if you were friendly with a manager down at the local cinema, you could get the ones that you wanted, and some of them are worth an absolute fortune these days. There doesn't seem to be a great deal of love anymore for the movie poster.
No, the art of the movie poster is sadly gone now. I mean, most movie posters these days are photoshopped images of the people in the film, and some of them are shockingly bad and totally lacking in any imagination whatsoever. And I did really like, one of the reasons I really liked the Force Awakens poster was because it was a bit of a throwback to those older style posters with artwork in there. And again, with Rogue One, is a bit more of a throwback kind of poster that was released yesterday along with the new trailer. And I like that because, they do remind me of the old. I mean, I'm looking at it right now, a framed original poster for Star Wars from 1978, taken from outside a cinema. But you're right, Phil. I mean, that's a bit of a lost art now. And there were people like Drew Stanzen, wasn't it? Drew Sterzen, who was one of the most famous of the movie art and poster artists. Did a lot of the well-known. Did some really nice ones for the prequel trilogy. I mean, whatever you might say about the films, they had some cracking posters for those films. And I do miss that kind of artistry that used to go into poster design, and now it's just become, I guess, like movies themselves. It's all become very generic and very mass-produced, and there's very little artistry or imagination left in them.
Well, a lot of these,
a shame.
A lot of these film posters for films, certainly when I was growing up, like say 70s and 80s, even the early 90s, they became icons themselves. I mean, you could take all the lettering and all the titling away, and the image was iconic enough that you knew exactly what the film was. So some examples: Jaws. You all know what that one is. The woman swimming on the water and the shark coming up together. I mean, that is just an iconic image. You would know that in any form, any interpretation of that. You would get what the film was. Pulp Fiction. Uma Thurman on the bed reading the comic. Take away all the titling and all the rest of it. It's the same thing. Blade Runner. That iconic image of Harrison Ford there with a gun with the view of the city at the bottom. You would still know what that film was. Iconic images to look at. And then all the Star Wars ones, I mean, and all the variations of that, so all the Japanese variations and so on. You would still get what the films were about. I can't think of any modern film where there's symbolism or iconic character or whatever in a poster design that stands out. I can't think of anything in the last 10 years like that.
I don't know. The only time it ever sort of happens is teasery things, but very few films generate the sort of their advertising is being condensed into sort of a much shorter sort of all senses assault on the general public rather than feeding information out over a much longer period of time. Does 10 years just about cover Cloverfield? Because there was a cracking poster for that.
Yeah, it might have been a good poster, but was it one that left on the consciousness of the viewing public? Is it something that you could take the wording off now, Ed, and show me and I'd get it?
Yeah, because it was the one with the Statue of Liberty with no head.
See, I don't think I would get that.
Hold on, let me dig it out on the.
I did like the this. You mentioned the film earlier because it was one of the things they used to demo the Z1, but the Deadpool marketing campaign was very clever in its use of posters because they were humorous and entertaining, and they kind of sold the idea of the irreverent character who didn't give a damn and gave you an idea of what to expect in the film. So that was quite interesting. I tell you what I love old school movie posters that completely oversold the film to a level that it wasn't capable of delivering. Which was some of the great posters. You thought, oh wow, that looks amazing, and you saw the film and thought, well, hang on, where's all this stuff? I mean, Star Wars, for example. Do you remember the original poster of Star Wars, the one that was used in the States? Don't think it was used in this country. Which is the one where Luke's standing on, he's got his bare chest, his big muscular chest.
It looks standing like that did come out in this country. It was a landscape design. So
he's got thousands of X-wings in the background, and his Princess Leia looks really attractive, and you're thinking, this looks amazing, and it doesn't really deliver any of that. It was obviously drawn by somebody who had not seen the film, whereas the main UK poster is clearly, based upon actual images from the movie.
We're talking about these things. Obviously, I'm not married, so I get away with this. So I've got all these posters framed, all these really famous posters. So like Pulp Fiction, Star Wars, Blade Runner. I've got all of them on the walls in the living room and through the hallway and that kind of thing.
Well, I've got the Apocalypse Now one.
And
that's a good one.
And the end, the most recent one, if I'm looking at them all, is Trainspotting. Because I think that was the last kind of sort of really iconic design, because that was everywhere. And it didn't, and a lot of the advertising campaign didn't even have the name of the film. It had the name of the character. So you had Renton and you had Sick Boy and all that kind of thing on the side of telephone boxes and so on, and it was all the same design. I think that was the last time I can think of where the poster was used to that effect.
Yeah. But presumably you've seen the poster I was referring to now, and I thought that was quite iconic. I thought that was quite cool. So
yeah, the problem with that one, Ed, is that New York has been destroyed so many times on film.
This is true.
And certainly round about that time period as well, because you had Armageddon and you had Independence Day.
No, Armageddon was an Independence Day of 10 years previous.
Were they really? As long as that?
Yeah.
Was it really?
Armageddon is what, 98?
Yeah, that's right. It was 98, wasn't it? Sorry, I thought it was the 2000s. It wasn't. It was later than that. Yeah. Earlier than that. Sorry.
As I say, it was one of the last times I remember thinking, "Ooh, I wonder what that is." I mean, in terms of what Steve was saying about people who did films did the posters without watching the film, the classic example for that for me was Reign of Fire. Do you remember the poster for that? It had
a brilliant poster.
A brilliant poster with like a helicopter gunship battle between them and dragons, which at no stage in any way, shape, or form took place in the film. It's like, it was instead, Christian Bale at his bleakest.
Yeah, I do. I used to have quite a few movie posters around my flat when I was living in London years and years ago. So the ones I had, you've mentioned some already, Phil, but like Blade Runner, I had Blade Runner. I did really like the poster for Once Upon a Time in America with the kids walking in the street and the bridge in the background. And by a similar theme, I also had a copy of Manhattan with the couple on the Woody Allen and I think Diane Keaton on a bench, and again the bridge in the Brooklyn Bridge in the background. Which I really liked. I had a framed copy of The Man Who Fell to Earth, but then someone pointed out to me that the lettering was the same lettering that Iron Maiden used on their album covers, which kind of put me off it slightly. But I used to like that poster. And Clockwork Orange is quite a good poster in terms of selling the concept of the film in a graphical way.
Hodge is the only one that hasn't said anything here. Hodge?
I saw the subject and I thought, no, I'm not interested in this. But then I actually, for my digital collection, I go to quite great lengths to download nice poster art and landscapes for the user interface and Kodi. And the ones I've written down, you mentioned two at least, I think. Apocalypse Now is possibly my favourite. And I've Clockwork Orange, I really like that. And Scarface and Star Wars were the ones I wrote down. Star Wars, as you say, completely overselling things, and I just love the black and white of Scarface. But I think my favourite is probably Apocalypse Now.
That's a great poster. I do also, I have to say, I love the Hunt for Red October film poster. I just really, really like it. It's not a representation that the film is great. The film is very watchable, but I just thought the poster was a cracker.
Yeah, that's the one about the Scottish submarine, isn't it?
Yes. A Scotsman randomly in charge of a Russian submarine. No, Phil, that's a Lithuanian accent. Didn't you know?
I really like the poster for Close Encounters with that road and the light in the distance.
Well, you see that's another iconic image, isn't it? And it's something that really sticks in your mind is that light behind the road.
E.T. was also a really good one. Thinking about it.
Yeah.
That described the film very well.
But once again, they're all part of the golden age, aren't they? They're not. No one recently. I've been actually. Undoubtedly, you've heard me typing away. I've just been looking at films I've enjoyed that I thought had good imagery, and looking at the posters. I was looking at Super 8. There's nothing really great there. One actually that was actually quite good, and I'll ping this up for you. Was the Into Darkness teaser poster, because that I'd forgotten about it, so it wasn't that memorable, but it was quite good. I thought that was quite a clever use of imagery and and all the rest
so you've got this, because you've got the Star Trek badge there with
Starfleet logo, and
No, that is quite clever, that one. Got to say, but can't say I've ever seen that.
But it doesn't stick in the mind, does it?
No.
So
no.
I don't know. It depends. Obviously, Phil, you're the only place where film posters, I still encountered them, and you still got teaser ones and all the rest of it, is the underground.
Or the side of a bus.
Well, I don't look at buses. They're for the poor people.
Well, the buses go past me every 15 minutes. What was that?
I'm being facetious, but no, all over the underground has got obviously multiple poster spot sections. So there were lots. There's still quite a significant use of film posters there.
Yeah.
But I'm struggling to think of anywhere else.
But it's not the classic one sheet though, is it? That's the thing. You used to have.
It is in some of them. You're right. A number of escalator runs these days are on cycled screen image things, but most of the corridor and walkways across the London Underground are still fixed single poster. So, but no, you're right. I just, as the requirement for them has diminished, it's unquestionably the case that I think the quality of them has diminished as well.
I saw one recently, and it wasn't a one sheet or anything like that, but it was just the artwork and the way it was done, and that was Stranger Things. And the way that artwork's done kind of harks back to, like you were saying, Steve, the old Star Wars posters, the old Indiana Jones type poster and that kind of thing, where it's done as artwork. It was actually a painting, it's proper artwork. Well done, Netflix, for doing that, because that looks really, really stunning when you see it. Really good. Again, it's not
Netflix
a poster.
do good art generally. For their own series, generally, it's good.
Yeah, I thought that was really good, really good. Anyway, I think we've come to the end of the podcast for this week, so my thanks go to Steve Withers.
I chewed these fingers off before the frostbite could turn to gangrene.
Mark Hodgkinson.
I'll hitch a ride.
Ed Selley.
Because the Office of District Attorney never bought you a pony.
And who's going to design the poster for this podcast?
I don't know. I'll get my son on it. He's 3. I dare say it will just about match the actual content of the thing itself. So.
Probably. Get the cranes out. Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, bookmark AVForums for latest reviews, news and videos, and of course give us those 5-star ratings on iTunes, but only if you enjoyed the show. I'm Phil Hinton, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.